This conference is brought to you by Callstack, your React and React Native development experts.
Yeah, let's give it a clap to React Native, and thank you, Tomo. We're gonna see you in a moment. So we'll start the panel, the 10 years anniversary panel. It's a really special one. We invited people that were very close to building the framework itself and the community around it. So as a first person, I would like to invite Charlie Cheever, CEO at Expo. Hey, Charlie. Yeah, that's coming. Our next guest is Mike Grabowski, CTO and founder at Callstack. Hey, Mike. Nicola Corti, React Native core team at Meta. Hey, Nicola. Christoph Nakazawa, CEO at Nakazawa Tech. And last but not least, Tom Occhino, Chief Product Officer at Vercel. He's gonna join us remotely. Woo! Hello, Tom. Okay, we can start. So let's do some icebreakers first. Or maybe before doing that, yeah, with this panel, we would like to trace the past. That's why we, got all these people involved in React Native for 10 years or more. The present and the future of React Native as a framework, technology, community, and everything that we build around it. So my first question to you would be, what was your first time experience with React Native? And I'll start with Christoph, and you can pick up anywhere.
So at the time at Facebook, I was working on server rendering for React Native, for React. So using Node to run React and server render and stream the HTML, which at the time hadn't been a thing. So that was like the first time. And then I was working, I think it was like at a hackathon, and then we were all up overnight or something, and then some folks were building like the initial version of React Native, and I was kind of like, what are they doing? Like, I didn't get it at first, but the interesting thing was that it was so similar to the server rendering thing that I was building, because they were building, the first version was actually running in Node.js on like a computer, and it was driving the views on an actual phone, which was just really mind-blowing. And that's where like the early versions of the bridge and the batching and all that sort of stuff came from. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, awesome. I would like to hear this from Tomo as well.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. It was a hackathon project in the very beginning. It was a really important idea, and I think we built a bunch of impressive technology in order to prove a concept. But it was that magic of seeing something update live, like a native rendered view update live, and we're like, wait, this is big.
Yeah, and maybe some perspective outside of Facebook then. Mike or Charlie?
James, my co-founder at Expo, and I were actually building something almost exactly like React Native. And then we saw the announcement, and we saw that React Native got like 70,000 GitHub stars in 72 hours. And we just decided, we probably don't want to compete with this. Let's just sort of get on this train. And I think it's for all the same reasons all of us have been part of this community. It's just like, you can develop across all these platforms and build really high quality native stuff and have that developer experience that you get with the web, where it's just like, oh, I'm typing and stuff's happening. I'm not waiting 7 minutes in between steps to compile.
Yeah, like magic when coming from native development, right? Mike, how about you?
Well, I started with version 03-ish or 4, I think. It was quite pragmatic because I was an iOS developer back then, and I built a fully functional iOS application for my former employer, and then they asked me to build Android version, and I was like, I checked the docs, I read a bit about writing Android apps with Java, and I was like, hell no, I'm not learning that. And just accidentally, React Native got announced a few months beforehand, and I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna give it a go. And it worked, and I was totally sold on the idea of being able to write for both platforms with single code, and that's how it started.
Yeah, and Nicola?
Yeah, I have a funny story, which is actually the opposite than yours. So when I started at Facebook back then, it was like more than 4 years ago. So we used to have a thing called bootcamp. So when you join as an engineer, you're not assigned any team, you just get to experience different teams. And you have like an interface that I like to say is like Tinder. Basically, a team reach out to you and you can like accept or reject. And like it was during the pandemic, so like teams were hiring like crazy. I had like 15 reach outs, like Instagram, WhatsApp, all sorts of teams. And then in the inbox, there was Eli. He sent me a reach out for React Native. And I was like, I was a purist. Like I was doing native Android development only. I'm never gonna do cross-platform. But the beauty of Bootcamp is that you can actually sit with the team and get to see what they're building. So I spent like 3 days with the React Native team, and I was like there is so much things to fix in this code base. And I guess like it feels like a nice place to be. So that's how I started.
Yeah, awesome. So in the topic of starting with React Native and the beginnings of the technology, Tomo, I have a question to you. What was the spark behind React Native? What was the problem that it was solving, actually?
Yeah, around the time that we started working on React Native, engineering velocity at Facebook slowed by about an order of magnitude. Effectively, a change that used to take a week. You know, you could commit code on a Monday, have that code be rolled out to production on a Tuesday, collect data and make changes to it Wednesday and Thursday, and roll the final version of it on a Friday. That entire end-to-end process now would take about 2 months. Not only did you need to, were you iterating more slowly because the native platforms needed to compile code and your development loop took a lot longer, but you also needed to then like compile these big things, submit them to the app and Play Store for approval, and then wait for users to upgrade their apps. So our iteration velocity slowed dramatically. But worse, we actually created this divide in our engineering organization between iOS and Android development and web development separately. So we had multiple separate teams building the same thing many times with slightly different implementations, different quality bars and feature gaps. And so we really saw an opportunity to get those teams talking again and to enable them to share hopefully lots of Facebook specific business logic and UI code. Rather than sort of platform-specific code. We wanted them to be able to use the same tools and technologies and share code and share ideas and just kind of talk to each other again and get us back to operating as a single cohesive engineering organization. So, when we saw the React Native hackathon demo, we were kind of like, oh my gosh, like this could be it. So very, very excited about the early promise. And to this day, I think, it was an incredible idea. It still is an incredible idea. And, we just had a lot to build.
So some extra question to Chris is like in those early days, what was the biggest challenge in convincing people internally at Facebook and maybe then externally, but getting those first users using the technology? Like you were skeptical at first as well.
Not really skeptical, just like I thought it was just crazy.
Surprised.
Right? I didn't think it could be done. So it's pretty awesome. I'm thinking of like two moments. So you know, React Native was announced in 2015, but it obviously was being worked on in 2014. And so one of them, that's more like maybe the external moment, even though it was an internal moment for us, was we had a bunch of like sofas and like a TV next to where we were working. And every June there's WWDC, Apple's Developer Conference. And in June 2014, I don't know if anyone remembers, but that's when Apple announced the Swift programming language. And you know, we were all like there. It was 10 a.m. in like Menlo Park. We were hacking. We were working on whatever we were working on, like React Native and other things. And then Apple suddenly announces like this new programming language for iOS, right? And it's like going to change everything. And I just distinctly remember how everybody was like looking away from the screen and looking at each other and was like, wait, you know, is this going to kill React Native? Is this going to kill the thing that we're building? But then I think pretty quickly it was obvious that, yeah, maybe, you know, this, if you squint, the Swift syntax looks a bit like JavaScript, you know, if you squint really hard, you know, but like,
Really?
but I mean, you know, just like compared to Objective-C, you know, it looks much cleaner and closer to that. But then, you know, what Apple was doing, like they weren't even thinking about the UI framework and the UI programming space. They were thinking, how do we get from this kind of legacy language, this Objective-C that nobody really wants to write, to something modern, right? While we at Facebook were thinking of like, hey, how do we change how user interfaces are being built, right? So we were like so far ahead. And so that was like just really interesting to see that nobody outside of Facebook was thinking about this at all. And then the other internal moment then was, I don't know how much you remember from this, Tomo, so maybe you can share your thoughts, but every like 6 months or so, we had this like all hands, which is like all the engineers at Facebook get together, and it was still fairly small in 2014. And then Tomo did a presentation there, and he was presenting React Native to the entire engineering population at Facebook. So that was the first one. And then the second one that was being presented was this company that Facebook acquired called OS Meta, which is pretty funny given the current name of the company. And OS Meta, they kind of like reverse engineered all the Apple APIs and like built like their own like runtime for basically iOS apps. And they were like, we're gonna bring the Facebook app and the Instagram app to like Android and to Windows and to every platform. And you know, everybody was like looking at each other in disbelief, and it also didn't happen. And at the same time, React Native was being presented as like, hey, you know, it wasn't, I know Tomo didn't say, hey, go and stop writing Objective-C and Java and just write JavaScript. And this was at the time untyped JavaScript. It was all just JavaScript, not Flow or TypeScript. So it looked really scary to a lot of the engineers. So I think that was just like this moment to realize where we were kind of convinced of this technology, but everyone outside of our group still had to be convinced. And then what you're asking is like, how did we convince those people? And I think, you know, even today it's still an uphill battle, right? So some people were bought in, right? And you're actually on the team. But I think it's just a lot of hard work and dedication to build those technologies and to, you know, question reestablished practices all over again each time.
Yeah, so Tomo, do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'd love to. You know, I think in the early days, one of the biggest challenges convincing people was just like, is it going to be possible to build experiences that are as high quality as what we're currently achieving with Objective-C and UIKit? And, you know, I think initially one of the biggest cohorts that was against React Native were designers, because designers were sort of like used to this new set of primitives with UIKit. And it ended up being like we convinced a couple of designers that they could sort of explore the space a little bit wider than the constraints associated with UIKit. And they got excited about kind of like coloring outside the lines, if you will, which React Native made really easy. But I think the biggest challenge we had was like the default quality of React Native apps back then was just not there. This is before Hermes, like Christoph said, it was before like even typed, most of this was regular JavaScript. It wasn't even TypeScript or Flow. It was certainly before bytecode and turbo modules and things, right? So React Native surfaces have these painful cold starts. App startups were really, really slow back then. But the promise was there, right? So the people that were easily convinced were the people who really believed in the promise and said, well, the technology is going to catch up. Of course, we'll be able to make the technology catch up. But there were a lot of detractors that felt like, wow, this is one step in the wrong direction. It's never going to be possible. You're going to be, you know, always behind the underlying platforms. But the thing that really convinced folks was just building great experiences, regardless of technology. Forget about how it's implemented for a minute. The thing that I always come back to is if you build something incredible that adds value to people's lives, they're going to say, well, how does this work? I want my app to work just like this. So that should be our North Star, is forget about evangelizing the technology in a vacuum. That doesn't matter. Evangelize the greatest apps in the world and then say, oh, and by the way, they're powered by React Native, because this is what you can create with React Native. So that went a long way in the early days of convincing, for example, the ads manager team and then the marketplace leadership, look at how great this product details page feels. Oh, by the way, it's implemented using React Native.
Yeah, so I guess it's all about building great experiences. And
100%.
Yeah, and this requires care. I think there was a lot of this in the early days of React Native.
Just one thing I wanted to say. It's pretty interesting. Someone, Christopher, that you brought up your perspective internally. I didn't know about it. I just wanted to say that from the outside, it felt quite interesting. It almost felt like everybody was waiting for React Native to be announced. I remember, all the meetups, conferences happening. I started making some PRs, opening up issues, and then suddenly the day after I had like 5 emails, people were asking me for contracting work because everybody wanted to get on the React Native train. They just didn't know how to build it. And they were like, surely it doesn't work, but we just need it like desperately for whatever reason. So it felt like it was dropped like just in time. And honestly, ever since that moment, I don't remember any other technology landing that as much as React Native landed, with people getting immediately excited about it.
Yeah, so Mike, as a person who co-created RNPM, which was the React Native package manager, like a first CLI, I think, for React Native. To me, this seems like one of the biggest turning points, because it started to be possible back then for anyone outside of then Facebook, or without specialized iOS or Android knowledge, to run and try React Native. So to me, this is like one of those turning points for React Native, and I would like to look for more. So what is your opinion on what are those key milestones in React Native development that pushed it further or helped it survive certain events? Yeah. That's an open question, yeah.
You already called out mine. I mean, I guess now that I have the microphone, I should answer probably. But my memories are really bad. And Charlie, maybe you can help me. When we sort of published our NPM and started doing early work with the linking, I wonder at what stage was Expo back then, or Exponent?
Yeah, I think for us, certainly, you've kind of led into a key moment for us was just realizing that people needed to be able to add native code to their apps. We originally were trying to build Expo as some way where we thought maybe like the web browser, we can just give most of the APIs people need, and that's enough. And like in the web browser, that actually, it turns out to be true. Like on desktop computers, you don't normally need to download Electron apps or things. You can just use a website for 85, 90% of the software you need. But on mobile, people just really want to use all the hardware. They want to access all the peripherals, things like that. And there's just all kinds of custom stuff people want to do in their apps. And so we at a certain point just decided we're gonna make Expo work really well with native code. And some folks who were working with the software mentioned, some people on our team sort of put together auto linking as part of that. And I think another step further beyond that for us was also the continuous native generation and pre-built stuff, which really helped people who are not super familiar with things like CocoaPods and all these other kind of things just not have to deal with the Android and iOS stuff unless they needed to. And they could just really focus on writing TypeScript and JavaScript, but still have access to that native code and stuff like that. But it really built on the work of, everyone else had been working to figure out this problem over time, starting with, a lot of the work that you guys were doing. One other thing I'd throw in there is an anti-answer to this is I think getting past that horrible blog post from Airbnb, that unsetting React Native thing, I think that we would be 3 years further along when we're sitting here today if it weren't for that blog post. And it just took about 6 or 7 years for us to get it out of the system and have people like until about 18 months ago, people were still asking me about that.
Yeah. I still see those Reddit posts or comments. Hey, isn't like Airbnb just dropped React Native? That was like 2018,
Yeah, something
7
like
years ago. Come on, get it, under the rock. So CNG definitely like one of the biggest things that happened to like a user space in React Native. This helped a lot of the like alleviate the upgrade problems. Anyone wants to add some of their favorites?
The new architecture.
I'll call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I was going to call out Hermes and bytecode caching as well.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet. I remember Svetan revealing that on this stage at React Native EU back then. That was like, wow, what's this? This is some kind of pre-compilation ahead of time stuff. Every other browser vendor was also talking about this pre-compilation back then with V8 and snapshot caching, etc. But that wasn't like super stable, and you theoretically could use that, but not very much in mobile apps. And then there's Hermes saying, "Yeah, we're doing that for over a year or so at Facebook. It works, and it improved our TTI by I don't know how many percentage points, and made our app smaller." So that was amazing.
Yeah, one of the big things that was holding us back internally after we had met the quality bar from the UX perspective, one of the big things that held us back was cold starts. So the startup time for React Native, you were just paying this tax. So if you had the first React, there were hundreds of React Native screens in the Blue Facebook app, but if you had the first React Native screen that was coming up on screen, that screen paid the cost of starting up the React Native environment and the runtime and loading all of the modules, etc. And it was like the biggest blocker. And it just felt like we would like tackle the quality drag. And it's like, right, now we have the UI looks great. And now we have the right, network layer and all these things are great. And then they'd be like, well, no, now the cold starts are too bad. This will never work. So then when Hermes came along, actually was a huge unlock for us internally because we could prove that we were network bound now and not like load code and runtime on the device bound. And so I know that wasn't necessarily as big of a deal externally, but internally that was a huge milestone for us.
Yeah. So these are some internal core team efforts like Hermes, like no architecture. There were some community-led efforts like CNG or RNPM. Are there any other events that you were like surprised by the community around React Native to influence the direction of the framework?
One thing I remember, and I was genuinely surprised, was the lean core effort. And generally, the React Native community, from my perspective, is truly special in a way, how easy it is to get a task to do. And I literally mean it. Sometimes, I used to do releases back in the day when it was as simple as just deploying on Friday. Somebody once asked me, how did you get involved? And it was literally as simple as Eli asking on Facebook group back then, who wants to help with the release? And you would just say, yes, I want to help. And then you would end up just taking any of those tasks. So back to my question, back to what I was saying at the beginning. When we started the lean effort, when Meta started pushing with the lean effort, organized the group, sort of create a list of APIs, it was, first of all, very accessible for everybody to get involved, which sort of sparked that idea from the community. And what surprised me was how everybody got involved, excited, and really contributed to this effort. So it was not really just one company behind it, or even 2, 3, 4, just a lot of people from all around the world. And I think that's truly special about everything we built.
Thank you. Because I worked on that, but I still feel embarrassed because the lean core effort was like phase one out of like maybe 10 or 15 that
What
should
were
have
the
happened.
other phases?
I think one of the big problems with React Native is just the surface area is like endless, right? It's not just JavaScript, right? It's like native code, but then it's not just one platform, it's like 17 or something. And then it's CocoaPods and Maven and like all these like and Gradle and Buck in some situations. And it's just then Hermes, JSI, now the Node API. The surface area is so large that it's just really hard to have like one or two or three people that can really like push the direction of the whole project forward. So that makes things go slower naturally, right? And there's so many people involved. So ideally, if we had seen Lean Core to the end, we could have split up React Native into more and more composable pieces, which makes it easier to like distribute ownership, but also to make it easier to swap out individual pieces, maybe a bit faster than what is happening sometimes. And maybe also allows newer frameworks to emerge on top of it that like reconfigure how everything works. And like the thing that worries me the most when I'm using React Native is just the layers and layers of abstraction on top of each other, where each one is a little bit shaky. You know, there's this XKCD comic of like, you know, like all these like stacks of rectangles, and then there's this one tiny little domino, and if you pull it out, everything will fall apart. And sometimes it feels like that when you're using React Native. So I think it could be good probably to bring back that Lean Core effort and like actually, you know, don't take anything away, just separate it and like make it so that you can independently move faster on each individual piece.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add something to it personally, so the way that you ended up in releases is like basically the same as I ended up in like contributing to Jest for a couple of years. Basically, Christoph asked, "Hey, would you like to help with maintaining this library?" After 2 pull requests, and I said yes. That was it. Like that was the entry bar to contributing to the biggest testing framework out there. So thank you, Christoph. I think this is it may sound like maybe not very technical, not very important. But it's really important for early stages of projects, at least in my experience, to have people that give ownership to other and that are able to encourage others to make some big or small contributions. I think it's a part of the success that this team was and is so open to feedback.
One off topic on that occasion, now that you brought up the contributions, I remember, you guys will know this, when I was sending my PRs, I was so excited. I would chase people that were doing this Fabricator import, and then you would have to sort of figure out the patch with the internal copy of React Native, and sometimes these things could be stuck for like weeks. So because you have to resolve the conflicts, that was like the fun part, chasing that one. I may have chased you, Christoph, as well a few times, like just please fix it, merge it, merge it. That was fun.
But the best part was that at some point we just didn't have time. So we found a way to give you access to ship code on GitHub that would then land inside of Facebook. And then that was shut down by legal, I think, at some point.
Was it like, okay, that's fun, that's interesting.
Yeah, so to maybe go to the like present of React Native, what do you think React Native is good at today compared to like alternatives like Apple's built-in stuff? And what's not so good about React Native today that could be fixed? So let's focus on the good part first, and then we'll go to the other.
Yeah, so I think for me, coming with a lot of experience on the Android community, which is really different from the React and React Native one, I think that's our strength, like the community. Like the Android community, and I think the iOS similarly, they're really like dominated by a strong first-party presence. So you go to a conference and like half of the talks will be either from Google or from people that like basically represent the same content that Google presented in their blog posts and so on, which is great. Like, I mean, a lot of great technology, but there is not much innovation compared to like a React or React Native conference. Like we saw talks about like Nitro modules, Node API, things that like they're so innovative, they might eventually at some point be integrated inside React Native core. That's how the development of the framework happens. It's not just like a team of people at Meta, which, by the way, it is really, really small. Like we are on the orders of like 50 people for React and React Native. But like React and React Native are developed by the community. Like we get so much support through like releases, libraries, and so on. This is really like the key point, the key selling point for React Native for me. What is not so good? Yeah, I mean, what you were talking about before. I think we are not doing a great job of stability. I think this comes from the move fast and break things that is core to Facebook and Meta. But being used by so many people out there, we need to have a stable API, a stable boundary that people can depend on. We can't break every release. And we've been doing like a great job, I hope, in the last years and releases. But we hope to invest more on this space and be even more stable and so on in the coming years.
Yeah, anyone would like to follow up on this? What do you appreciate about React Native today? I appreciate that it still renders to native views using native modules, and I can always fall back to Swift or Kotlin with the stuff that is just not there with some JavaScript libraries that are trying to reproduce the native behavior. That's one of my favorites, and it's so easy to make with React Native. Fortunately or not, we have 10 ways to do so with different module systems. But yeah, I think it's good to have a variety.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd just throw in there that I think the world, people in this room, I think have known this for a while, but I think the broader tech community has kind of recognized it's kind of a echo of what Tomo was first bringing up about getting one team to build your product. So you have one code base that gives you this consistent thing. You can move so much faster, and it's just way less expensive. And I think that used to be, considered a compromise you were making where you were going to drop down quality. And I think the technology of React Native has gotten to the point where you're not really compromising the quality of your product when you make that choice to use React Native and get one code base to target all of your target platforms. And I think that's a huge deal that we've kind of crossed that threshold.
Yeah, and it's so much easier to do with Expo with one code base as well over mobile web.
And that's actually the good part and the bad part as well. And we spoke briefly with Tomo about it the other day, so feel free to follow up as well. To me, the good part is that I can, in theory, write truly universal code across web and mobile. And that's not just the views. We mostly talk about UI, but that's also business logic. The bad part is that there is still a surface of APIs that is just different across mobile and web. And even if you take Blob API, for example, React Native has different Blob implementation than web. Lately, Expo published Expo Blob in the Canary, I think, which is web compliant. So that's just one of the multiple things we have to do towards that vision. But the bad part right now is that you cannot have the same guarantees. And for those, we need to kind of figure out how do we implement the web API standard and whether we go from web to mobile APIs or from mobile to web, which is kind of the React Native web versus React strict DOM sort of discussion.
Yeah, the thing I'll add to this is that we can never compromise on the end user experience because we're trying to make our lives a little bit easier as developers. And I think that this is one of the things that maybe in the early days of React Native, we sort of oversold how much better your life was going to be as a developer. And we undersold now this lets you move faster so you can create a better end user experience. In the initial keynote, I think I said, we're not chasing the write once, run everywhere pipe dream. Instead, we want you to be able to use a single set of technologies to build for any platform and share as much code as possible. And I think, early days internally, we shared as much as 80 or 90% of the Ads Manager app code for iOS and Android was shared. And I love the idea of that being in a singular code base. But we have to really recognize that when somebody is using your app on their Android device, they're not using it alongside your app on an iOS device. They're using it alongside lots of other Android apps on their Android device. So it has to feel at home on the host operating system. It has to feel at home on the host platform, not feel exactly the same as your iOS app or your web app. And so I still think this is probably the right North Star, which is allow sharing as much as possible, but don't ever share at the cost of the optimal device and platform specific user experience. I like that, Expo gives you the ability to sort of like, what code executes for iOS versus what code executes for Android. And I hope that we never lose sight of the fact that the underlying platform, all the, new capabilities and new hardware and new things, those are really important. And we shouldn't optimize for sharing code at any cost. We should optimize for how much more efficient this makes us as a team and how our team can build for all platforms. That is in itself such a huge accelerant and efficiency win that we don't need to shoot for 100% code sharing. But perhaps a controversial take 10 years later, because I know we're getting closer and closer to being able to share a lot more code across platforms.
Yeah, so let's imagine it's 2035, which is like 10 years from now. And obviously, we're going to change. We're going to be older by 10 years. Hopefully, we're all going to be here. And what do you think are the challenges ahead? And maybe first, let's paint the picture of what is the React Native or cross-platform mobile development looks like. So it's 10 years. A lot can happen. A lot.
I got a list if no one else does. So I think just zooming out, when everybody uses technology, probably 70% of our usage of technology is on our phones and through mobile. And yet when we look at developer energy, there's 9 times as many React web developers as there are React Native developers. And I think that if we do everything right, the people who work on React Native and develop it, the people at this conference and the people, tuning in, we should be able to get React Native to catch up and surpass React Web, because that's, there should be more people building for how people are building technology. And I think the path to that largely tracks doing stuff that will make it work for vibe coders. Partly because I think vibe coders will be and using AI will be a big part of how software development happens in the future, but also because vibe coders are kind of dumb. And so if you make stuff work for people that are don't really want to bother with details and don't want to fix stuff, you've really smoothed out that glide path and lots of magical things will happen. So when I think through that lens, I see okay, first we need an extreme version of backwards compatibility and stability and a hardened API, the way the web has, where I can load my website I made in high school and it'll still work on a modern version of Chrome, and I didn't have to go do some sort of upgrade every 3 months for the last 20 years for that to happen. And then similarly, web compatibility, like Mike was just mentioning, is I think a big part of that too, just having this consistency and stability and predictability. That'll make all kinds of things easier. And then that's tied into distribution, where I think if we can make it way easier to get React Native apps to people and things like that, that ties in with backwards compatibility, because you can make super apps, you can make other kinds of things like that. That's a really key piece of this, because I think part of the reason the web is so much more popular is because I can make a website, I can pop it on Vercel or any of other 20 other hosts and send it to someone else with a link in split second. And you can't do that easily with React Native apps just yet. And then I think I could go on for 20 minutes. I don't want to go all the time, but I had one more thing here. I think the other thing is the way that React grew, at least my understanding of this story, is a lot of people would there'd be a company that's all written in Knockout.js or Angular or something, and someone would come along and they'd say, oh, let me just use React in this one corner of this one page. And they would introduce React into a code base and sort of infect it with React. And then someone else would come along and say, I actually like React better than the rest of what this website is written in. And now that whole page is written in React. And then 6 months later, half the site is written in it, and there's an effort by the VP of engineering to convert the whole thing. And you can't do that. Yeah, you can't do that easily in React Native yet. These sort of brownfield stories are really hard slogs. And it's a lot more complicated and a lot more work with React Native because you're dealing with multiple languages, you're dealing with all kinds of things. But I think if we could get close to that point where just some random person could just start using React Native and start to take over these things, that would be a huge, huge, huge deal.
Yeah.
So 6 releases a year for 10 years. It means that we'll be talking about 0, 1, 40 at the panel at React Universe 2035.
Yeah, or 1.40.
Yeah, who knows? No, I mean, I really hope we'll we will be more stable by then, for sure. And yeah, like other scenarios where I would love to see us growing is the brownfield, basically what you, Charlie, were mentioning. My perspective is more like on the native developers. Like there is this, again, thoughts in the native circles that JavaScript is evil and is not allowed in my code base for whatever reason. I think we don't do a great job at making React Native accessible for brownfield apps. There has been like a lot of efforts in the past, also from Callstack and other folks in the ecosystem, but we can do a better job for like making it easier to integrate React Native in any apps. And we actually have this same problem also at Meta, because if you look at the showcase on the reactnative.dev website, you will see that there are notable apps missing from Meta there in the list. And the reason is because integrating React Native today in an app has a cost in terms of like kilobytes that you need to pay. So we are actively working on that, and we hope that, I don't know, maybe in 10 years, adding React Native will be like so minimal that you will not even feel it, and you will be able to just start creating your screens in your app and pay like so little costs.
Yeah. Tomo, Chris, Mike? 10 years from now.
One thing I'd add is that I think that one of the strengths of React as an idea, as a sort of meta platform, as a whatever, is that as the new underlying platforms emerge, it's sort of like ready for the challenge. And so I'm not sure if anyone here works on VR at Meta or AR or any of this stuff, but a lot of that stuff is actually powered by React Native. And so I'm interested to see where that goes, because you've got years and years of investment and infrastructure that's now relevant in a new context. I do think that, maybe it'll take longer than we hope, but I do think like the computing form factor is going to change at some point from the slab in our pocket. And I really like that React and React Native are like ready on day one, like, and most of the infrastructure and most of the architecture is still relevant in that world. So I hope that by 2035 we're using some compelling AR experiences powered by React. I guess we'll see, but I really like that there's a sort of solid architecture here that can work for any net new OS or any net new platform that comes out without having to throw away everything we've done in the past. So 2035.
Chris?
I find it incredibly hard to answer this question. I'm just not sure if we'll be still writing code with our hands in 10 years from now. Like, and then maybe, even if we're still using React Native, maybe the AI will be writing React Native. So I don't know how many people, maybe you'll have 50 people in your org, but you'll have 5,000 agents day and night making React Native better. So it's pretty hard to predict, honestly.
Yeah, I think one thing that I keep thinking about is, like, React Native to me seems like the de facto cross-platform or the meta-platform framework. The challenge I would say I see is the potential change of the paradigm where we just stop using mobile devices entirely. Maybe we switch to AR, VR, but maybe it's just this one big chat application that we just talk with and everything happens behind the scenes and is all MCP. So I would say as long as we're writing mobile apps or any sort of apps, it seems like React Native will be around. In case the paradigm shifts, there will be a few interesting opportunities for sure, but it just might not be a use case for something like React itself as well.
Yeah, I mean, if I can add more things, one more thing. We're approaching the end of time, but I have like one last question for all of you. It's gonna be a quickie, adding adding from myself, I think there's. I just wonder if we have like in 10 years, it seems like it's probable that maybe we'll have like another operating system that's gonna be, I don't know, allow us to create instant apps by having interactions with this system. It would be great if React Native was native to this new operating system. That's my fault, but it's super, super, super hard to create new operating systems. So it's probably going to be Linux based. But yeah, this is just my like quick take. And before we part ways, I wanted to ask, what would be one message that you would leave for the next generation of React Native devs, vibe coders, and all sorts of other people or not people writing code?
I'd like to see React Native be used in like the hot paths of the most popular things in the whole wide world. Like one of my favorite things right now is that Particle is written in React Native. And it's like the popular thing that people use, at least in America, for like inviting people to parties. And it feels great and it looks awesome. And I don't think it could be better if it was written in Swift or whatever. And I think like when you look at other things that are popular, like YouTube and stuff like that, those are mostly still written in native, and we've got to climb that hill. And like the way that we do climb that hill is React Native devs being ambitious enough to try to do that and push the technology to the limit, write patches, upstream them, make new libraries, write new native code, write great libraries in JavaScript, everything that it takes to do that. That's what I want to see.
Yeah, so bold developers, you hear that? Yeah. Mike?
I would say, use AI as much as you can, vibe code if you want as well. But at the same time, try to learn as much of the fundamentals as you can as well. Try to understand React Native, all its APIs. I think as long as you know what's going under the hood, you'll be fine.
I move on. Okay, I guess for me is just, maybe don't be afraid to connect with the community. I know it sounds like a little controversial, but I speak with a lot of people that come speak with me and they ask me like, how do I start doing open source? How do I get involved and so on? And I feel that we have a lot of opportunities for contributions, but they're all lost in like people being afraid to like start contributing and so on. React Native does we do an amazing job as a community, as I said before. Like we are really welcoming, and I met people that are like friends of mine, like literally in this community. Like we had great time, great stories together, and don't be afraid to join. Like probably this message should not go to you because you're here at this conference. This message should go to other people there. Maybe we'll watch this panel live. Who knows? But don't be afraid. Like I like to say the software is built on human connections first. When there is like strong connections, like people from my team, like I go to the office every day because it's just have a great time with them. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Eli convinced me to stay and join the team. So like there is React Native, maybe at some point in the future, React will not be relevant anymore. Or maybe it will be relevant for many years to come, who knows? But don't be afraid to get in touch with the community. I think this community is awesome. What we built as a group of humans is amazing, and just get involved.
Check out my talk tomorrow afternoon. First piece of advice, please come. The other thing I want to say is just don't build boring things. Like, use your passion. You actually have way less time to build things that you're excited about, that you love, that that gives a smile to people. So, and like don't waste it. Build products, build software, build infrastructure, build stuff that you're proud of, and make the code beautiful too. We don't have so much time anymore to write beautiful code, so don't do boring things.
Yeah, I'll add to that, and to what Charlie said. I think my advice is just build incredible experiences that add value to people's lives. You don't need to tell them that it's React Native. They'll want to know when they're using something that's incredible. I love what we're doing with Fernando's building the V0 app here at Vercel, and the app feels incredible. Forget about what technology it's using for a minute. Every single little interaction, there's so much care and craft and attention to detail. So I want to see more particles that become part of the zeitgeist. I want to see more apps that use React Native without necessarily you even knowing that it's React Native. And then they come to conferences to tell us how they did it. But we need to, really just care about the craft and how, at home these apps feel and also how delightful they are. And they have to actually be valuable. They can't just be little throwaway apps. Add real value to people's lives, and the rest will sort itself out.
Yeah, I think this is some. I heard people clapping for a moment, so I think this is the good time to say thank you to all of you, answering all of these questions, sharing your thoughts, your memories from the past, on the present, and the future. To me, it's always a pleasure to have any kind of interactions with the people here. I consider them my friends, and so happy to be here today on this stage with all of you, and I'm so happy that we keep on building in this similar and same space of React Native. There's still so much stuff to build and to ship. So thank you very much, Charlie. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Nicola. Thank you, Christoph. And thank you, Tom. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. And I hope we'll see each other in the somewhere at the venue, in the community, on X, and everywhere else.
2035.
I was thinking about today and tomorrow, but 26. Thank you.